This industry has been broadly beaten down and kicked down over the course of the last decade, more specifically under the Biden regime. So, they were victims of policymaking through prosecution and persecution. That's obviously no longer the case. They're just looking for a clear set of rules that allows them to develop and contribute to the U.S. economy, and that's what we're providing them with.
Hey everyone, I'm Jen Sanasi, and on this show, we are unpacking a major moment for crypto in the United States. The White House has just released its long-awaited digital assets report. Joining me now is the executive director of the President's Council of Advisors for Digital Assets, Bo Hines, and counselor to the Secretary of the Treasury for Digital Assets, Tyler Williams. Bo, Tyler, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Jen.
All right, I got to start off with how you both are feeling. We have this report now. It seems like progress is moving at a speed that this industry has not really experienced up until this administration. So just talk to me a little bit about how you're feeling as, you make steps towards your ultimate crypto goals.
Well, look, I think it's excitement, and we'd be remiss not to thank the president for his leadership in this space, as well as our brilliant AI and crypto czar, David Sachs. As David has said, we like to move at tech speed. I think that we've done that over the course of the last 6 months. And, what you see with this product is really a comprehensive framework along with recommendations that really show how serious we are about being the crypto capital of the world and creating an environment that allows industry to thrive and succeed here in the United States. I mean, look, this is the best place to do business. We have the best capital markets. And our message to folks that went offshore is welcome home. This is a new era, a new chapter. And with that, there's just a ton of excitement being generated about this report.
Yeah, absolutely. I would echo everything that Bo just said. And what I would add to it is that this is a comprehensive vision for the future of digital asset policy in America. And it is a reset moment where we can now have a enumerated list of action items that we want to execute against. So you'll see recommendations that are both congressional and legislative, and then we'll work diligently to go execute across those.
I want to talk about some of those recommendations in just a second, but Bo, you mentioned that message to American crypto companies that have gone overseas. I know you told us that the day that the Genius Act was signed here on one of our CoinDesk shows. Have you engaged with any of those firms that went overseas that are looking to bring their operations back to the U.S.?
Well, look, I think that all of these firms want to be operating in the U.S. now under this current administration, and especially with clear and robust rules. I mean, with Genius, I talked about last week or a week and a half ago at the bill signing. I mean, this is basically a revolutionized financial system, updating archaic payment rails, creating more cost-effective, more transparent transactions for the American consumer, but also laying the foundation for a lot of exciting things we can build upon, like tokenization of public securities and 24/7 markets, allowing Americans to go in and out of asset classes at will. And then we have, American, or the U.S. dollar dominance piece of this as well. It creates, immense demand for U.S. treasuries, American debt. And I just think that, this report will only help to implement a lot of what's been laid out. So you'll see us talking about what that implementation looks like. And we've described this really in 3 phases, right? We've had the demolition phase, removing a lot of the blue tape, as the president likes to say, the overburdensome regulations that existed and prevented digital asset firms from actually working with traditional financial institutions. And then we've had the construction phase. A lot of that work, has fallen on our colleagues over on Capitol Hill. And then we'll have the implementation piece of that. And I think this report really pulls all of it together. It's the 3 prongs of the stool. And so, this is quite an exciting day for us.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add one thing to that. Throughout the process of working on this report, the working group has met with hundreds of individuals, participants in the market, academics, a full slate of people to listen to. So we've met with a great number of people who have talked about what they're excited about building in America. And I think this piece of work gives sort of a roadmap for what to expect in the future as we work to execute against it.
Tyler, when you were meeting with all of those different folks from industry, both private and the public sector, were there any contentious points, any points that really had to be debated and discussed before you put pen to paper?
I don't know if I would contextualize it as contentious. Policy advocates and builders in the space should feel convicted on their opinions, and the policy-making process writ large is deliberative. Bo and I and many other members of the working group have taken meetings and received feedback. So, our job as policymakers is to be good stewards of arbitrating whether or not the idea is meritorious or if it bears merit. So, that's a lot of what is in this process of us doing that, then putting pen to paper And then the next step of the action item is like going to work with Congress and going to work with the other regulators in the working group and the other cabinet members to execute against it. So I wouldn't say it's contentious, but if you don't believe in what you are saying, then what are you doing?
Yeah, and one thing I would add to that as well is, we've worked hand in glove with industry to get to the best product here, as Tyler's described. And, this industry has been broadly beaten down and kicked down over the course of the last decade, more specifically under the Biden regime. So, they were victims of policymaking through prosecution and persecution. That's obviously no longer the case. They're just looking for a clear set of rules that allows them to develop and contribute to the U.S. economy, and that's what we're providing them with.
Midnight is a privacy-enhancing blockchain, introducing vital, programmable privacy and selective disclosure capabilities. It means DApps can allow users to control what information is revealed without putting sensitive data on-chain, allowing you to break free from the limitation of choosing between utility or privacy. We deserve more when it comes to privacy. Experience the next generation of blockchain that is private and inclusive by design. Break free with Midnight. Visit midnight.network/breakfree.
All right, let's dig into what's in this report. I know it's almost 200 pages, or at least the one I took a look at this morning was almost 200 pages. But I'm going to start with you. For folks who are trying to make sense of this, what are some of the important takeaways that everyday crypto users, crypto firms should be taking away from the report?
Well, I think what you're going to see here is we're breaking down the barriers that finally allow digital asset firms to interact with traditional financial institutions. A lot of the best technology in the fintech space is coming from the digital asset world. So we want to make that integration seamless. And that's something that this report will certainly contribute to. We talk about market structure in this report. We point to Clarity quite a bit. We think that's a fantastic product that the House produced. Obviously, the Senate's coming up with their own product, and I'm sure there will be a merger of some sort. But you'll see that we protect the principles of Clarity, the things that we really like there, give a lot of credence to the work that's been done in Capitol Hill. And then with Genius, you see a restatement of Genius with also the implementation standards that Treasury will be working on. So I'll let Tyler speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, maybe I'll just zoom out for 1 second and then get more specific. When I think about the digital asset policy-making stool, so to speak, there's sort of three core components of it. We've seen that stablecoin legislation through Genius has been enacted. Treasury's fast at work to implement that law. We have the market structure legislation that is advanced out of the House with broad bipartisan support. Now the Senate is actively considering that. And then the third leg of the stool is really this report. This report sort of buttresses both of those legislative items and points to specifics that the working group would like to see executed against. So all of the details in the report, whether it's the specific jurisdiction and the divide or breakdown of policy items between the SEC or the CFTC, whether or not it's reforms or action items that are relevant to builders and developers in the space, whether or not it's tax items, whether or not it's items specifically in the banking system. What we're doing is articulating the granular level of policy that we want to go either fix or build.
Looking through the report this morning, I saw a lot of policy initiatives that are already very familiar to us covering the space. You've just mentioned that many of what we've seen have been reiterated in this report. Are there any places where the working group is seeking policy that we haven't seen the administration previously express intention?
Well, maybe I'll take a first stab and then turn it to Bo. I think a lot of this is sort of a greenfield effort. Like the crypto policy community has been talking about these items for quite some time, and we know that Congress has taken deliberative steps in trying to advance market structure even in stablecoin legislation, even in last Congress. Now we're really in sort of the full force effort to get it done. So while many of the policy items that you will see are not unfamiliar to the audience and to the public, I think we put a little bit more meat on the bones in terms of like the action items we want to see. So you've seen the bank regulators take substantive action to take down some of the interpretive letters and guidance relative to what are permissible activities and that banks can do relative to permissionless technology and integration with the actual blockchain. But now we're seeing some more meat on the bones in terms of what that means.
Well, out of that, you're also seeing the recommendations, right? And, I think that our interagency actors will take those very seriously. I mean, that's why this is a product that's been stamped by all the members of the working group. We've come together and delivered something that honestly is probably the most comprehensive piece of work on digital assets ever produced. And I don't think that should be lost on anyone. We'll get into, all the specifics in the report. People can take a look at that. But we talk about tax issues, consumer protections, everything like that. And we hope this gives a lot of good guidance to Capitol Hill as they continue to work on market structure and hopefully put that on the president's desk before October.
I want to dig into one of those suggestions now. The SEC has really been the main regulator for this space, but the report is suggesting giving the CFTC explicit authority over spot markets in non-security digital assets. Talk to me a little bit about how this shift would impact innovation and enforcement.
You want to take a first stab at that, or you want me?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we've had product regulators throughout the existence of like the U.S. capital markets. And we like to say in America that we're the world's leader and we have the deepest and most liquid capital markets in the world. And that is true for a long laundry list of reasons. What we want to see happen and what the best way to build a durable economy for digital assets in the United States is providing that same level of certainty to the market participants and building that infrastructure in the United States. So I think what is very clear is that for the digital assets that are securities, having singularity in terms of their regulatory infrastructure that lives and breathes in the same way that it does in the traditional securities markets, and then having a parallel path for the non-security digital assets to live at the CFTC.
I mean, simply put, it's about the rules of the road, right? Who has jurisdictional authority over what? Who do you report to? I mean, these are things that folks in the industry have been begging for quite some time. We think this is the cleanest and most robust way to do it, having this sort of dual regime process, but I think it's something that industry is in line with and we'll be very pleased with.
There are two questions that have come up around this that I've seen, folks discussing in various different forums. And one is, does the CFTC have the resources to take this on? And the second is, what happened with the halt in the confirmation process for Brian Quintenz, who was Trump's nomination to chair the CFTC. Curious if either of you have any thoughts or comment to add there.
Well, I will say I think Congress is well aware that the CFTC might require some additional labor, but I think that's something that we can easily get done through legislation. In terms of the nomination process, we're policy guys. We're not personnel folks. I think I speak for everyone that we certainly understand Brian is really knowledgeable when it comes to this space. But we'll see what happens with that, and we'll watch it proceed like everyone else.
Yeah, I would just echo both statements. And what I would say on the market structure element is that's been a debate in Congress for quite some time, and we'll work very fervently with our counterparts on Capitol Hill to land the plane in the best place.
All right, I want to dig into DeFi now for all those DeFi folks, the degens out there. Where's their place in this regulatory vision?
Yeah, let me take a first stab at it, and then you can jump in. What I think we've seen is a lot of movement in both Congress and in the regulators on decentralized finance, and it's a lot of just sort of getting comfortable with the technology, getting comfortable with it being different than traditional rails and how payments move, et cetera. I would point to a couple specific things in Clarity. There's legislation that was included in Clarity that specifically speaks to what developers and builders and engineers can expect from the actual rules of the road for being a money service business and how they're expected to comply with the Bank Secrecy Act. So I think you'll see a lot of conversation in the report that specifically looks at those items as well.
And I'll just add to that and say holistically, we want people innovating and developing here in the U.S. We want to protect those developers, make sure they feel as if they have the rules of the road laid out for them as well, because ultimately, all the development needs to be onshored. And I think you've seen the administration take immense steps to do that and offer guidance that can be utilized. And with Treasury removing the sanction on Tornado Cash, we understand how important immutable smart contracts are and open source code. We want that being produced here, and we're going to do everything we can to provide the guidance necessary to do so.
Can truly decentralized protocols realistically comply with the rules, or is there a vision for meeting somewhere in the middle, like a mix of centralized and decentralized protocols?
I think decentralized protocols can definitely meet the rules of the road. At a certain point, it just becomes about control, right? And I think that's the line that we're trying to draw. I think we've done that successfully over the course of the last few months with guidance that's being offered by the relevant enforcement agencies. We'll continue to shed light on what that looks like and make sure people have everything they need to build here in the U.S.
And I would add there's some real meat on the bones in the report on this specific issue. So I just urge the viewers to read the words in the page.
All right, let's talk about the strategic Bitcoin reserve. I think it's something that a a lot of folks in this industry have been watching. There is a page in the report dedicated to it. It says that that the reserve will be capitalized by forfeited digital assets. I know there is a note in there that says you suggest the report suggests looking into other ways to acquire the asset. But talk to me a little bit about the US's plans. Are there any plans to purchase Bitcoin? Is there anything new that you have to share here?
Well, look, I've said repeatedly, we want to accumulate as much as we can possibly get in these budget neutral ways that are outlined in the SBR executive order. We also have the Digital Assets National Stockpile, which gives credence to other ecosystems and what's being built elsewhere in the space. As the president likes to say, we have very smart people in the administration that are working on this. I think that we'll move on ways of accumulation that can be implemented most expeditiously. And I think that people will be very pleased with what we come up with. But I also encourage people just to understand that there's an infrastructure piece of this as well. And Treasury is working diligently on that, making sure everything's set up properly so that we can move forward in the best way possible.
Yeah, and I guess what I would add is the executive order that the president issued on January 23rd really tasked the working group to making fulsome recommendations on the legislative and regulatory perspective for creating the best environment for the industry to thrive in the United States. That's really sort of the core competency and importance of this report. Separately, there is a different executive order, as Bo just mentioned, relative to the digital asset stockpile and the strategic Bitcoin reserve.
And the one thing I will add to that as well is, we love Bitcoin. We understand it's unique. I think we've said that repeatedly. Bitcoin is digital gold, and we're going to continue to beat on that drum over the course of the next few months.
I know we're talking about this digital asset report, but Bo, I know that you've mentioned before that the Bitcoin Reserve report is coming. Is there any timeline on when we might see one?
Well, there's actually nothing in the EO that mandates we have to produce an SBR report. I mean, I think we'll flesh out exactly the best way to engage with that matter. But there are all sorts of interests to consider here for our country and the U.S. consumer more broadly. And we'll continue to work on that. I think that at the end of the day, the result that we come to, everyone in the industry will be very happy with.
All right, let's talk about timeline here. We have this almost 200-page report with suggestions. Like you said, there are many people that are going to have to get to work in implementing these and making sense of them. What can folks expect when it comes to the processing of this report and the implementation of some of the recommendations?
Well, I mean, I would say we'll work expeditiously. The things that we can control and the items that are explicitly left to the executive branch and the market regulators that they don't need additional congressional agency or authority to execute against, we'll continue to fervently work to execute against those and to implement changes.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. I think that folks understand, how important this is. It's just a reminder for the audience, like everyone came together to build this report. So all the interagency actors know what's coming, and they know they need to move quickly to deliver on these.
Bo, Tyler, thanks so much for joining. Thanks for providing that insight, and I'm sure we will chat again soon.
Thanks so much, Jen.
Thank you.